Greetings, brothers and sisters. Well, we're here again. We're going to be continuing our little mini series entitled Do Christians Need to Keep the 7-Day Sabbath Today? Is it still binding? Should we be paying any attention to those 10 commandments? Or better said, to one of those 10 commandments. Now, we have to ignore the Bible here when the Bible says, if you break one, you break all. That doesn't apply in this situation. Why? Because they have deemed it so. I'm your host, Louis Nelson, and I'll be presenting this little mini-series. Well, we're almost done, actually. Hopefully today we'll be able to get it done. But before we do that, please like, subscribe, share the channel, share the links, all that good stuff that you guys do. And also, if you're interested in helping out the channel, you can also take a look at my book that I'll put out there as well. They're available on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. Without further ado, let's go and jump right down into this. So we're going to pick up from right where we left off. It has been pretty interesting questions that's being asked somehow, I have to say. I think they're grasping at straws. But anyways, let's go ahead and see if we can get through the rest of this. Hopefully we'll be able to do that today. I'm going to try my best to really put a few hours into this to see if I can get this done. Anyway, let's go ahead and start right off with it.
All right. Same individual has another question. Question to Jose. Will Goliath, the giant who was killed by David, be judged for not keeping the Sabbath? Jose, you have 1 minute.
I love this question. It's actually a fun one. I think Goliath is going to not be saved for a lot other reasons than just the Sabbath. I think we're talking here about rebellion against God and rebellion against his people. That's why I said what I said before. Jesus didn't die on the cross for me to stay in a rebellious state. He died on the cross so that I can walk in harmony with him as I let Christ live in and through me. So is Goliath not making it because of the Sabbath? I think he's not making it for a lot of other reasons.
That's a strange question. You would think that would be. This just goes to show you that, there are Christians out there that they actually think about these things. When they actually think about it, will Goliath be saved? And everything that we read about Goliath, it tells you that he will not be saved. David cut off this person's head because he was defying God. He was defying God. I want to make this as clear as possible. He was defying not Israel, because I guess he was doing that too. But he was defying the God of Israel. And in so doing, defied Israel as well, because Israel believed in this God. And he was like, pull him out. I'll take care of him too. And what was Israel doing? When they had to really step up to the plate, they would start to get second thoughts. Will God show up? Now, when you read that story in the Bible, I want to just put this out there. Just think about this just for a little bit. You have the whole army of Israel encamped on one side of the mountain, and the entire different army encamped on the other side of the mountain. Well, two different mountains, basically. Everybody's trying to be eye to eye here. And Goliath said, when we get down there, we ain't going to be eye to eye. You can see what the mountain is. Which one of you guys are going to fight me? He would get up every morning until he ran out of breath. Come on, you yellow bellies, come down here, fight me. Your God is powerful, isn't he? These are the type of things that he was saying out there. How do you think that you would defy the God of Israel without mentioning him? Or maybe the God of Israel was Israel himself? No, the God of Israel wasn't Israel. He was out there. He was defying the God of Israel. Yeah, your God that you believe in, he would be able to save you, wouldn't he? Let's see if he can save you out of my hands. Come, any one of y'all that come down here and beat me, then we will all serve you. This is what Goliath wasn't a king. He wasn't a king, as far as we know. As far as we know, he wasn't a king, but that's what he was saying. Anyone there in his camp was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. No, everybody was like, oh, well, he said it. Because they was all thinking the same thing. Yeah, I want to see your God come out and save. David heard this, and David went down there. No, I just want you to try to picture what's happening here. David heard this. He went down there and said, I'm going to kill you. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm going to kill you. And Goliath, like, you send this little mangy dog here to fight me. He's still in diapers. This is who's going to come and fight me. Now, Goliath said something. If I win, then you will be our servants. I want you to just try to picture what is on the line. Goliath said, if I win, you will be our servants. If you win, then we will be your servants. That seems like a fair deal, doesn't it? Now, all those people there in Israel was cowards, including the king. Now, keep in mind that Saul wasn't a small person. He was head and shoulders above all of them. He was head and shoulders above all of them. But he wasn't head and shoulders above Goliath. Yeah, it was a different category altogether. Now, the thing here was that if we win, you're going to be our servant. If you win, we will be your servants. This was the deal that was being made. David heard this. David said, how in the world can you let this uncircumcised Philistine defy the God of Israel? What's wrong with you guys? I'm going to go out there and fight him. And you know, people tend to not really think logical about this. People don't think logical. For some reason, people don't think because they have gotten accustomed to reading the Bible like a storybook. Not as history, as a storybook. These are pretty stories that I can tell my children. But they don't believe, they definitely hasn't thought about it. Now just think about what's happening here. One man, one child, you can almost call him. Because I mean, that's what they were calling him. That's what they were calling David, right? Child. One child decided, I am going to fight him. And if I lose, then all you guys are going to be their servants. Yeah, you let that sink in. That's what was happening there, brothers and sisters. If I lose, this little child against that hard-back man that lived his whole life in war, that's what Saul told him. Saul came and put on his armor. He's like, I can't use this. This thing will slow me down. I'm going to go out there naked, almost. Yeah, just a shirt on my back and a towel around my waist. That's how I'm going to go there and fight this dude. Now, anyone in their right mind would say, man, you can go and fight him if you want, maybe. This is going to be like an amusement. This wasn't no amusement. Everybody came out to see what was going to happen. Because neither one of them had the nerves to go out and do what David did. What his brothers told him when he got there. You read and see what his brothers told him when he got there. They would say, what are you with me now? What have I done this time? Isn't there a cause for me to be upset with what's happening here? He was indirectly saying, how come you guys ain't upset about this? They hold their peace. Then word came to Saul, you know, this guy, this child David, he wanted to go there and fight this Goliath. Now Saul is the king. Now Saul now is agreeing with David. Okay, you can go and fight him, knowing what's on the line. This is what was on the line. This is what the Bible says was on the line. You didn't hear anybody negating that. No, that we ain't going to agree to that. No, when David went out there, everybody, he had their life in had their life in his hands. All of their lives. That's what someone that they didn't even, a child, nonetheless. But they were scared out of their wits. They were all trembling, that's what the Bible says. All of them. David wasn't trembling. David was upset. That's what he was. Oh, David went out there. And he took off, just paraphrasing, he took off his head. When that happened, what happened to the Philistine? Did they surrender? Did they surrender? That's exactly what happened, right? All of their courage left them. What would have happened if David had died? The same thing was going to happen to the other crew. Because now David was forcing them to look to see if God was going to respond. What would have happened if God did not respond? I'll tell you what was going to happen. The same thing that happened to the Philistines. All of their lives was in two hands, in the hands of two people. In David's hands was his crew, and in Goliath's hands was his crew. When David killed Goliath, it was because of the defiance of God. The Goliath isn't going to heaven. I think we can all should be certain about that. But you see, some people are not. They're confused with this. And why are they confused? Because of the Trinity. It is confused. They don't know what's going to happen. And they can't read the Bible logically. They need to see these things. Because they have been told something else. They're not supposed to. They have been told something else, and that's what they're going to go with. That's what they believe. Because these people know. They know. So obviously, they don't need to study the Bible. Sad thing, brothers and sisters, sad state.
I think you're muted, Miles. You're muted.
Tony, anything you want to add to that? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, well, of course, he's going to be judged for his paganism, worshiping other gods rather than the one true God, which he's guilty of, because Paul says that everyone has that moral aspect in their conscience, Romans 1. Therefore, they're without excuse. That's Paul's whole argument.
No, that's not speaking about the 10 commandments. It's speaking about the 6th commandment. It's not the first 4 isn't in there. That's what I think. These people doesn't understand the Bible. They don't read the Bible to understand. They read the Bible to argue. It says this, but I'm not going to look too much into it. This is what it means to me. I don't care what it means to you. What does the Word of God say? What does it mean in there? That's what we care about.
But this raises an interesting question. God did not condemn Babylon for Sabbath breaking.
He did not condemn Babylon for Sabbath breaking. Well, no, he did not condemn Babylon for Sabbath breaking. He did not require them to keep Sabbath either. You see, only his people are required to do. I want to repeat that. Only God's people are required to keep the Sabbath. And who's God's people? Anyone that calls themselves a child of God. I know they don't know what that means either, because it definitely doesn't mean child of God when they say it. You know, there's a whole different meaning there. But that aside, anyone that wants to join themselves to the Lord is required to do it. How do we know this? You see, when they was in Egypt, they were keeping the Sabbath. We already went through that in previous videos. They were keeping the Sabbath. At least that's what Pharaoh said, that they were keeping the Sabbath. You came here and make these people Sabbath from their labors. So he understood that they stopped working on this day before they left Egypt. This is why Pharaoh doubled the load on them. You can work on Sabbath? Here's what's going to happen. I ain't going to give you no more straws. And you better not diminish the tally of bricks that you have to give in every day. You find your straws wherever, because they was bringing them straws. Who was bringing them straws? It was the Egyptians was bringing them straws. That's where they used to get their straws from. The Egyptians used to give it to them. But now, the Egyptian wasn't giving. You're going to find it yourself. You better make sure the tally of bricks is there. You know, I ain't playing no games here. So this is what was happening here, brothers and sisters. Now, listen to this. Why am I getting into that? Anyways. When God took his people out of Egypt, his people. He didn't take the Egyptian. Were the Egyptian his people? No, they were not. They wasn't his people. What happened with the Egyptians that went with them? Were they his people? Questions start to arise, doesn't it? Were the Egyptian, because a whole bunch of Egyptians left, that wasn't Jews, left with these are the same people that tried to bring them back. Yeah, you all better let's go back to Egypt. Things was better down there than these here. There was a mixed multitude with them. It wasn't just Jews. Now, were the mixed multitude God's people? You have to be careful how you answer that. These are the questions that they would not dare to answer. No way that they answer that would be beneficial to them. Let's just say, if they were to say, the Egyptians, no, they was not God people. Oh, really? Okay. Then why were they required to keep Sabbath if they was not God's people? They wasn't Jews. Why were they required to keep Sabbath? Because the Sabbath was just for the Jews according to them. If that's the case, then why were the Egyptians required to keep? Or did the Egyptians get a pass? Like when God was saying, if you were to go out there and pick up bricks and stuff, kindle a fire on the Sabbath, you would die. That didn't include the Egyptian. That's the Jews. You talking to Jews, you talking to us. Yeah. Would they have get away scot-free? Yeah, they was going to be stoned too. Why? Because they was identifying with God's people. That's why. They were identifying with God's people. And because they were identifying as God's people, God said, well, here is the rules. Here's the rules. Or just think about this. How about if any one of those people that the mixed multitude say, I'm going to go back to Egypt where I came from? Would they have been required to keep the Sabbath down there in Egypt? No, because paganism doesn't require Sabbath keeping. God doesn't require Sabbath keeping from pagans. That's what these people are. Pagan. They call themselves Christians. But they're pagans because they do not identify with God's people. They want to pick and choose what they're going to be okay with. Okay, I'll take this one because I like it. I'll take this one. But this one, yeah, God, I ain't doing that. Yeah, I'll take this other one here. I'll do this. Yeah, I ain't doing this neither. That's their mentality. That's the mentality that they have. They think that they can just pick and choose and then call themselves. God said, I'm going to kill you. You want to do that mess? You leave. You leave and you go out there and you do that mess. But you can come to my house and try to put down rules there and decide what you're going to do. Now, it ain't going to work that way. You're playing with your life. You want to do that mess? You leave. That's if any one of the mixed multitude had left, they wouldn't have been under the law. Because what puts you there is being a child of God, a follower of Christ. That's what makes you keep the law. And anyone that is a follower of Christ do not break the law. Because they cannot break the law. Why? Because God's seed is in him. That's what the Bible says. And he cannot sin. He can't sin. Now they want to interpret can't sin as we can sin. See, the Bible says that we can't sin, so that means that we can't go out. I mean, these people has it so backward. I mean, it's not even comical. This is messed up, folks. But they're Trinitarian. You can't expect much from them.
Egypt or Assyria or Philistia. God condemned them for other things like immorality, sexual immorality, murder.
Exactly. What does God condemn other nations for? For the moral law. Because everyone knows they're born with the moral law. What is the moral law? They want to say, the moral law is keeping, not taking the Lord's God name. That's not the moral law. The moral law is the last 6 commands. It's the one to your fellow men. That's the moral law. Now, if you know about God, then you can include the first 4 in all 4 of them. Not just the first 3. It's the first 4. If you know about it. If you don't know who God is, you don't know what God requires, you don't even know if there is a God, then what you're going to be judged by is the moral law, which is the last 6 commandment. It's love your neighbor as yourself. That will fulfill all of the law. All of it, brothers and sisters. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you will fulfill all of the law. But that's only if you do not know about God. That's the only way that would pass. If you do not know, there's a whole lot of Indians that died here in America, all over the place, that never even know about Jehovah, never heard the name Jehovah, never read a Bible, didn't know it exists. See, according to these people, all those people are lost. I don't know if that's their mentality, but a lot of people has that mentality. That if you didn't read the Bible, then yeah, there was no hope for you. Oh, brothers and sisters, God isn't as petty as they would like to paint him out to be. God judges us by what we know. That's what you're going to be judged by. That's why he can judge you. Rightfully and honestly. Judge you by what you know. When you stand before the throne, God will say, see what you did to your brother here. Do you think that was right? Do you think that was right to do? God's judgment will be truth and honest and correct. Everyone's going to agree with his verdict. That's how God's judgment is going to be. These people are all confused, brothers and sisters. All confused. They don't even know what the moral law is. I mean, how could they? They're Trinitarians. All three of them.
And so on. But not once did God condemn the Gentile nations for Sabbath breaking. He only condemned Israel. Why? Because it was his sign with them.
It was his sign with his people. So I would ask him, are you his people? The answer to that question is no. Why? Because his people keeps his laws. The people that is not his does not, and teaches others to don't do it. Teaches others to defy the God of heaven. That's what they teach. And I'm going to show you how you defy the God of heaven. He asks you to do this, you just say no. I'm going to do what the Roman Church tell me to do. Or any other church that's out there. I'm going to do what they tell me to do.
It was his covenant sign with them. It was the wedding band between him and Yahweh and his bride Israel. That was their wedding band. And they violated.
And his bride is, who is it? Who is his bride? Which bride is he coming for when he returns? What does the Bible say? What his bride is called? It's the church, right? That's his bride. So tell me something. Did God get a different bride? Is that what happened? Did God break his vows? Is that what happened? See, they're Trinitarian. They can't do any better than they're doing.
That wedding band,
It makes
that
all
wedding
kind of
vow that
sense.
they made to Yahweh. So of course God would not condemn the nations because number one, he's not married to them. Number two, he holds them culpable because
He is not married. You can't make this up. He's not married to them. He's married to Israel. So tell me something. Are you Israel? See, they would have to answer. No, we are not Israel. Fine. Then God is not married to you, is he? See, there's no way that they can answer this question and get away with it. No way. They can't say yes and they can't say no. See, this is what the Trinity leaves you. This is total confusion. Just what the Bible calls it. Mystery Babylon. The mother of harlots. Total confusion. They don't know who God is. They don't know what God is. They don't know where he is. They don't know who his bride is. They don't know if they are part of his bride or is his bride. These people are confused to the point that it isn't even comical. That's, have mercy, man. They study years and years for this nonsense. All their doctrinal studies and philosopher studies and divinity studies and all, and this is what they come up with, brothers and sisters. Willfully ignorant. That's what the Bible calls them. Forever learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. Now, if that isn't sad, I don't know what is. Forever learning, that's what the Word of God said. Forever learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. And you want to follow this?
there was image bearer,
Time.
but the Sabbath was not given to the Gentile nations.
All right. The next question for Jose. You mentioned you do not believe the Sabbath is required to be kept for salvation. However, Ellen White wrote that it was. Who to believe? Your time will begin when you begin, sir.
Good question.
Well, obviously, this is a question, not exactly the premise of the debate. I would simply say, when I've read Ellen White's statements about the Sabbath, the principle is simple. If the 10 commandments still stand, all 10, the Sabbath included, then the reality is that breaking the Sabbath is as breaking any of the other commandments. And so that creates a problem, because if I choose rebelliously to break any of God's laws, saying I'm just going to do what I feel like doing because I want to do it, then that's a problem. Now, I have a little bit of a difference with my opponent on this kept by the law business. No, I'm kept by grace, but grace puts me in harmony with God's law.
That was a pretty good answer. Pretty good answer. Let's see how Good doctor's going to respond.
All right. Tony, anything you want to add to that? You have 1 minute.
Actually, I think I'm going to say something about this. Okay. So basically, sorry. Sabbath is not a requirement if you do not know about it. Because Sabbath is love the Lord your God with all of your heart. If you do not know the Lord, then it is not required. I want to repeat this, if you do not know the Lord, the Sabbath is not required. Because if you keep the last 6, that is enough to save you. If you do not know the Lord, and we're not talking about know the Lord, I mean that you know about Him. Like you have read the Bible, you have a Bible. These are people that does not have the Bible, does not know God exists. Sabbath is not required. Because Sabbath is not part of the moral law. The moral law is moral. You are born with this law. It is not taught to you. You do not need to be taught about God to know that killing someone is wrong. You don't need to be taught that. That's why people that doesn't know the Lord, when they kill someone, they run. Why do they run? Because they know something is not right. See, something in you, something morally in you, tells you that, this isn't the right thing. I did something wrong. You go and you sleep with someone's wife. You didn't just walk into his house and say, hey, I'm going to borrow your wife for a sec. No, you do that behind closed curtain. Sneaky. Hiding away. Hopefully no one. Why do you do that? Because it is morally wrong. You do not need someone to teach you this. God instilled this law in you. This is common sense. That's what the moral law is. See, they want to say that moral law includes the first 4 commandments. Moral law does not include the first 4 commandments unless you know about it. Now, for us, it would be the entire 10 commandments. That would be the moral law. Why? Because we know about the 10 commandments. But those first 4 commandments, you have to be taught that. It's not instilled in you. Now, people could get an idea that something exists outside of this reality by looking at nature. Anyone with half a brain would be able to sit down and say, something, how did this get here? Why do I like what I see? Why do this feel good? Why does order seem to be beneficial and disorder not beneficial? And people that know about the Bible and just doesn't believe it, they're in the same camp of those people that doesn't know about the Bible. But those are infidels. That they say atheists, agnostic. Those people, they are following their heart. They do not believe because they require something to believe. And the Bible has what they require, they just don't see it. And we can't show it to them for some reason. They require proof. And he said, well, you all have faith. Well, faith is the proof that they are required, but we don't even know that. We do not even know. Because, like I say, we don't read the Bible. We have put our own definition on what faith is, like the Bible doesn't define it. What the atheists require is what God has given, which is faith. That's what they require. They require this, and God has given us this. And we don't even see it. We have decided to define faith as something else. Someone else decide what faith is. Well, let me tell you what the Bible says faith is. Faith is the evidence and the substance. That's what faith is. What do the atheists require? Evidence and substance. The atheists require what God has given. But we have decided faith is ignorance. That's what the Christian world has decided faith is. I believe because I have no idea about this. I'm ignorant of all of this, so that's why I believe. And the atheists say, yeah, you're a fool. For me to believe, I need evidence. And I need to be able to prove this. And that's what the atheist requires. And that is exactly what God said faith is. But we have decided, no, faith isn't that. Faith is ignorance. That's what faith is. Whenever I get to something that I don't understand, then I take that by faith. That's ignorance, brothers and sisters. That's what that is. And that ignorance is what atheists rejects. I have a whole video on faith as well. Reading it. The Bible tells us what faith is. Now, I will give you an example of how it is that what is the evidence and something that we can give the atheists. Because since that's what they believe, that's what they require, and not all of them. Most of the atheists, they require this thing, but that's not really their requirement. Let's just say that because they think that you can't produce it. Because if you was to give them the evidence and substance that they're requiring, most of them would still reject it. Tell you something, right? They would still reject it. Why? Because they don't want anything to do with God. But that's not all of them. Some of those atheists are really sincere. If you were to be able to give them the proof, the evidence, the substance, then they will accept. But we are incapable of doing that. We don't even know it exists. That's how messed up we are, brothers and sisters. So messed up we are.
The important thing here is to recognize the New Testament is the commentary on the Old. We should never interpret the New Testament in light of the Old.
You can't make this up. This guy's out of his mind. He is right out of his mind. Plumb out of his mind. This is what Trinitarianism gets you. This is the rationale. He thinks he's being rational. They have no common sense. He hasn't thought about this. Could that happen today? And would he accept it today? So that nonsense that he just said. That the New Testament is commentary on the Old Testament. You cannot have the New Testament. The New Testament has no validity without the Old. You have to throw the entire thing out if you don't have the Old Testament. No Jew would have believed in Christ. None. Not even the disciples would have believed in Christ if the Old Testament didn't exist. The Old Testament, it points us to the Christ that was going to come. You cannot accept Christ without accepting the Old Testament. But you see, these nuts live in the New Testament. And they want to do away with the Old. They want to jump this step to get to the New Testament. Like the Old Testament doesn't even exist. It never did. You can't accept the New Testament if you don't have the Old. It would be, no Jew would accept it. Neither one. The reason why they accepted Christ was because of the Old Testament. The Old Testament said that he was going to come. If the Old Testament didn't exist, there would have been no New Testament. Point blank. And this is what his doctorate has studied, has given him. This is the illumination that he has come to. Can't make this up, brothers and sisters. You can't make this up. Have mercy.
We should always interpret the Old in light of the New. And this is a maxim that Jesus taught us, and also that the great fathers of the church like Augustine taught us as well. But we need to understand that the New Testament has already responded to this question. Romans 14, again, 5-6, Paul says there's a difference of opinion about the observance of days. Paul did not make that essential feature of the Christian faith. He called it's called the diaphora, disputable matters. And one of them is that some people regard every day alike or the same, or others regard one day holier than another. But let everyone be convinced.
Yeah. I know we all already looked at this text, but I think we should probably just take a quick look at that text and see exactly what that says. And maybe you haven't seen the previous video. I guess since he brought it up, let's just take a look at that, should we? Romans 14 and verse 5. This is the text that he's referring to. Like, they are willfully. Brothers and sisters, you do not go to school for the amount of years that they have gone to school to not understand what you read. They have deceived themselves. Listen to what this is the go-to text that he always bringing it up. This is his go-to text, I would say. One man esteemeth one day above another. Which day is that day that he esteem above another? Which day? Is that any day? Because this is what he's trying to say. Not anyone would tell you he esteems Sabbath above the other days. That seems to be simple to understand. I doubt he understands it, but it's pretty simple to understand. We read in the Bible. We reading some type of novelty book or something. We reading the Bible. This is what we're talking about. We ain't talking about any nonsense. We're talking about in the Bible esteems one day. above another, right? It does. Which day is that? It's the Sabbath. So you have one person that esteems the Sabbath day above all the other days. He is saying that this is the Sabbath. This is why he gave the text. See, it's not talking about the Sabbath. You can make any day, esteem any day like the Sabbath. But he doesn't believe in the Sabbath. See, but he teach his people the commandments. But somehow you can't make this up. But anyway, let's look at it again. One man esteem it one day above another. So one man esteem it the 7-day Sabbath above another. Another man esteem it every day alike. Every day like which day? Like the Sabbath day. You have one man that esteems all 7 days as the Sabbath. Now, who is this man that does that? This can only be the preachers, the priests, or anyone that is in the ministry. We can't do that. I can't do that. I have to work. I can't esteem Monday, Sunday, Friday, Thursday. So we can't do that. The only person that can do something like that would be the priests and preachers. Because this is their job. They can spend the entire day this way. They're actually employed to do this. That's not me. That's not you either, most likely. We can't esteem every day. And if you look carefully at this word alike, that's not in the text. What this say? Another esteem it every day. Not every day alike. Every day. See, they add this alike as a Trinitarian that translated our Bible for us. These people that translate the Bible are Trinitarian people. This is not in the text. That's why it's there in the brackets. See, that's the good thing about using a real Bible. Because Protestant had their own Bible. It was a Geneva Bible. Oh, the Catholic Church didn't like that one. That Bible was brutal. All the margin, but in that Bible, that was brutal, brothers and sisters. And I don't know if God liked that. My best assumption would be that God did not use the Protestant Bible for that reason, because it was too brutal. God wants people to come to the truth by themselves. Because when people read the Geneva Bible, I mean, that Bible, I wasn't playing around. I was telling you exactly who the beast was. And it wasn't giving up good names either. That thing was brutal, brothers and sisters. So the King James Bible was the same Bible, but without the margins. They couldn't give us a Catholic Bible, you see, because the Protestant would have rejected it. So they had to give them what they already had. But they just say, we just strip all these margins because, the Lord didn't say that. But there was studied people that came to those conclusions. They put the margin there in there. Oh, brothers, that Bible was brutal, brothers and sisters. I wasn't pulling any punches. But my best assumption would be that God is not in that type of brutality. God is a meek and gentle spirit. It wants to draw people in. Doesn't need to fight to do it. Doesn't need to call names to do it. We should all be able to read the Bible for ourselves and come to real, true conclusions. But we will never be able to do that being a Trinitarian, because the Trinity is against the Holy Ghost. It's against the Father, and it's against the Son. It's the devil that who the Trinity is. It's not the Father. Trinity isn't the Father. You ask anyone, is the Trinity the Father? No. No, the Trinity isn't. It's the Trinity the Son. He's all. I'm not asking if he's all them. I'm asking the Trinity, because they say the Trinity is a. They actually say it's a being. The Trinity is a being because there's only one God, and that God is the Trinity. So is God a being? It gets confusing. What do you mean is he a being? What, you need me to spell it out for you? Is God a being? If God is 3 persons, well then he's not a being. Is the Father a being? This is where it started getting into hot water. Now they're all confused. They don't know how to answer anything now. At this point, it's trying to close it. They're trying to just end the conversation. And you crazy. You crazy. Start to call your names. Is the Father a being? Say it. Yes or no. See, the Bible says that the Father is a being. And the Bible says that the Son is a being. Does the Bible say the Holy Ghost is a being? No, maybe you look in between the lines, you turn it this way, you look at it in this angle, and from the leftmost side, you kind of make it out. That's what you call playing with the word of the Lord. That's what you call that. Playing. But let's look at this text. This here is saying that one man esteemed one day above another day. One day above another day. Which day is that one day? That's any day. No, it's not. There's only one day that God esteemed above any other day. Any other day. One day God esteemed. God said the Sabbath is that day. So logic would dictate that this day that he's talking about here is the Sabbath. The Sabbath is above any other day. And this same man or another man would say, well, another man esteemed every day. Not just one day, every day. Not just one of the select which day you want. No, every day. He's still esteeming the Sabbath day. The only thing different here is that he's esteeming every other day as the Sabbath day as well. It's not that I must esteem Sunday as the Sabbath day. And I'm not going to, no, it doesn't say that. It's every day. There's only 7 days in a week. And all 7 days he esteemed them like it's the Sabbath day. That's what it's saying there. These people play with the word of the Lord, Branson. Let every man be persuaded in his own mind. If you want to keep every day holy, then keep every day holy. God isn't going to, you're not getting in a problem for giving God more than he asked for. It's not like you can say, but I can't esteem another day, give God another day because, God only required Sabbath. And if I was to give God another day, well then, that would be sin. No, brothers and sisters. That wouldn't be sin. If you give God, make holy every day, you keep from Sabbath until Sabbath. You treat them all with the solemnity of the Sabbath. There's no problem with that. God, you're not getting problem with God for giving him more than he asked for. When you're getting problem with God, when you give him less than he asked for, that's when the problems start. These people have it back, everything there, and that's what the Trinity does. It puts everything backwards. They understand everything from the tail to the head. They can't start from the head to the tail. Everything is backward with them. Everything. And they can't do any better because that's what their God demands. That's what their God teaches them. They can't do any better than they're doing. That's it, brothers and sisters. It's a sad state. It's a sad state. Have mercy.
We should always interpret the old in light of the new. And this is a maxim that Jesus taught.
Always interpret the old in light of the new. Now that is nonsense. Could you believe that someone that studied, a doctor and all of this stuff, he would say something like that? Just stop and think about how ridiculous that is. How could the Old Testament is what validates and gives power to the New Testament? It's not the other way around. The New Testament didn't exist, when Christ was on this earth. There was no New Testament. Everything that they studied was the Old Testament. When they went out and preached Christ, they preached Christ from the Old Testament. They wasn't going out. See what Peter said here? See what Paul said here? We have to accept this. They will laugh you to scorn, probably stone you. Peter, Paul, James, every one of them was preaching from the Old Testament. This is how they preach Jesus. This is how the people accepted who Christ was. They would never accept who Christ was reading the New Testament. These were people that they have never heard about. What in the world will they throw away their own text for one text that they know nothing about? Yeah, this text, you just do away with the Old Testament. Because you hear what I say? This is look at what I just read here. What I just wrote here. See? It's the New Testament. Listen to what that says. See? End the discussion. What kind of nonsense is this? None of them was preaching from the New Testament. None of them. Who preached from the New Testament is us. We are the one that preached from the New Testament. The apostle and none of the disciples preached from the New Testament. First of all, it didn't exist. For Paul, Peter, or any one of them to have any validity, they had to prove who Christ was. And for them to prove who Christ was, they had to use the Old Testament, not the New. These people have it all backwards, brothers and sisters. You can't tell me that the devil is behind all of this. But they will never be able to see it. The Trinitarians, their God have them blinded. They're blinded, brothers and
taught
sisters.
us, and also that the great fathers of the church, like Augustine, taught us as well. But we need to understand that the New Testament has already responded to this question. Romans 14, again, 5-6, Paul says there's difference of opinion about the observance of days. Paul did not.
Difference of opinion, that's not what he said, was it? It's not what he said at all. We just look at that. These people have deceived themselves. And they use the Bible. You can't make this up. They use the Bible to deceive themselves. They don't have the common sense. They can't sit down and read the word. How does this make sense? How could this happen? No, they don't need to know how it happened. See what it says right here? That's all I need. I don't need to investigate this. I don't need to look into this. I don't need to do anything, because if I do, it's going to say something else, so you just stay away from it. That's how these people roll, brothers and sisters. That's how they roll.
Not make that a central feature of the Christian faith. He called it, it's called the diaphora, disputable matters. And one of them is that some
disputable matters. It ain't nothing to be disputed there. Well, I guess they can.
People regard every day alike or the same, or others regard
every day alike or the same, and others
one day holier than another.
But one day holier than the other. He's doing his best to not say Sabbath, see? But he is saying this because of the Sabbath. I mean, you can't make this up, brothers and sisters. The whole reason he brought this up was to say, you see, you can make another day holy or esteem it holy. Yeah, you choose to do that. If you want to do that, fine. If you want to make every day holy, that's fine too. But when you make that day holy, what do you call that day? What is that day called? I'm just curious. See, they have to say Sabbath. Yeah, make this up. Which other day would be holy? They have to say Sabbath. Well, no, he's talking about Sunday. He's not talking about Sunday. There's nothing in there about Sunday. He's speaking here, even he's speaking about Sabbath. That's the entire reason he brought it up. He's talking about Sunday. He's talking about Sabbath. So we make another day the Sabbath day. Another day other than the 7th day. We esteem that. We decide, well, I want to do this one. I want to keep that day. I want to keep the other day. And then he goes out to it and he preached the 10 Commandments. We have to follow the law. You cannot make this up.
But let everyone be convinced in his own mind. And if you observe the day, not the Sabbath, not the first day, not the second day, if you observe the day, it is unto the Lord that you observe it. So remember, and Jose did not dispute this, 9 of the 10 Commandments are repeated in the New Testament. Except the
9 of the 10 Commandments is repeated in the New Testament. You sure about that? How about the first one? Do not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Is that one repeated in the New Testament? For some reason, I haven't been able to find that one. Or maybe that one we could do away with that one too, right? Because it's not repeated in the New Testament. How about this? Do we find in the New Testament where Christ did not take the name of the Lord in vain? Do we find an example of that? Do we find him saying that? Do we find him doing that? Do we find him taking the Lord's name in vain or not taking it in vain? No. Do we find Christ doing any of the 9 that he's talking about that is mentioned in the New Testament? Do we find Christ doing any of those or not doing any of those? The answer is no. The Bible is silent. Do we find Christ obeying the 4th commandment? Do we find Christ doing that? See, they don't have any legs to stand on. But they will not give up their God. That abomination have them blinded. See, the only commandment that we know that Christ kept was the 4th commandment. It's the only one. That's a shocker, isn't it? That's a shocker, isn't it? Can't make this up. Can't make this up.
to keep the Sabbath.
All right. Another question for Jose. The electricity grid keeps hospitals, jails, and SDA churches running. Are workers there breaking the Sabbath? You have 1 minute when you begin speaking, sir.
Well, the question is workers referring to electricity, or is workers referring to, I'm assuming it's the electrical grid. And so I would
No.
say,
Just one clarification. I think he's saying that the workers there are utilizing things like electricity, and then the electrical grid is causing people to have to work to maintain such a thing.
That's what he's saying.
okay, if that's what we're saying, then I would simply say that, look, what is necessary is necessary. That's the Sabbath's not dealing with, oh, lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Don't forget that Jesus's debate with the rabbis was over their extra stuff. This stuff about you can't turn on a light because you're starting a fire on the Sabbath, or you got to take a light bulb out of your fridge, or you're breaking the law. That's tradition. That's not God's law. But helping someone because the electrical grid went down and they got to make sure it stays and get it back up again so hospitals can keep moving, that is lawful to do good. But we're talking about unnecessary labor. Working at a restaurant, generally speaking, is unnecessary. That's not work that should be happening on the Sabbath day. Something like that.
Hmm.
Something like that.
Perfect time.
Exactly. So to better explain that is like I did in previous video. No, this is kind of a non-starter kind of question. Like, how could you answer that? So they wanted us to say that, the idea behind this question is that to tell us that we are breaking the Sabbath and we are causing others to break the Sabbath, right? We are breaking the Sabbath. We are calling others to break the Sabbath. Other people uses the grid, and we also uses the grid. And do we have a explanation for this that is biblical? Well, God told the Jews that they could not eat anything torn of its like die of itself, or was torn by animals. Like if a wolf or something come and kill a sheep, yeah, we couldn't eat that. God said, yeah, you cannot eat it. You cannot eat that type of meat, but you can sell it to your neighbor, which is in other countries, a foreigner. Because you couldn't do it. You couldn't sell it to a different Jew, another Jew. I can't eat it, but I'll sell it to you. No, we're in the same boat. I couldn't eat it either. If I was a Jew, I couldn't eat that meat. But I could sell the meat to someone else that doesn't have that requirement. This was something that God said that they can do. Just so you know. So they couldn't eat the meat, but they couldn't cause other people to eat the meat. Because it was clean animal, right? I ain't talking about pigs. God said, God never did give the Jews a go ahead, to say it that way, to eat, to even touch pigs, much less raise them. That's what God said, told the demons, yeah, you all can go in those pigs. And they went in those pigs and run all those pigs off the cliff. Now, Jesus knew what was going to happen before he told them that they could do that, because he knew what they wanted to do. But you see, the Jews that was raising these pigs should not have been raising these pigs. It was against God's law. God said you cannot touch these animals. And they were raising them. So you see Christ there, he was working in the Old Testament too. So yeah, you can go in those pigs, knowing what would have been the outcome of that. Or maybe they think that Christ didn't know. Christ didn't know that they were going to run the thousands of pigs into the water and drown them all. Christ didn't know that somehow. Do you think if there were sheep, Christ would have permitted it? I think not. Now, anyone with common sense would know that the reason why Christ permitted that because they were swines. And they should have not been there. They definitely should not have been there by being tended to by Jews. So Jews were the one that was doing all of this. The Jews wasn't a Gentile. Jews. But see, yeah, you can go into those people. We're gonna kill them all. Let's kill them all. And that's what they went to do. They went to kill them all. And then the people came and told Christ, you have to leave. Christ knew that was going to happen too. Yeah, you stop thinking about that. But with that said, it kind of applies to this idea here. Everybody use electricity. It is a necessity today. It is a necessity today. We have a lot of stuff. Because if you can't use electricity in the churches, you also can't use it in your home. Yeah, the home wouldn't be excluded. You can't use it in your home either. I mean, you get electricity, go back to the dark ages, and you can't even put on light either. Well, if you don't have electricity, you don't have any light, so that would take care of all of those problems, right? It would take care of all of those problems. Let's just say that your loved one is in the hospital. Sabbath comes. They're on a respirator. They can't breathe by themselves. They can't breathe by themselves. They need equipment there to keep them alive. Sabbath comes, yeah, all these people gonna die because we cutting off the electricity. Would you be okay with that? That with your mother in there? Oh yeah, this is the Sabbath. I understand why you're doing that. I understand that. You keeping the Sabbath. I mean, you killing these people. Yeah, you keeping the Sabbath. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, right? It's in a bad question, and it comes from a bad place. No, we're arguing here about what God asked us to do. No, what God commanded us to do. That's what the problem here is about. It's what God commanded us to do. God commanded us to keep the Sabbath. He commanded us to do this. It wasn't up to debate. This is what God commanded. And we are arguing about this. You gotta really stop and let that sink in. You really have to stop and let that sink in. And then look at grasping at straws here. Look at you all have electricity and you turn on light, that's work. See, what the devil would want these people, let me not say that. What the devil would want Seventh-day Adventists to do is follow these people's advice. Yeah, you can't have electricity on the Sabbath. You can't drive a car on the Sabbath neither, because that's working. The car is working. You can't do any of this on the Sabbath. When the Sabbath comes, you all need to just disappear. You all can't assemble yourself together neither, because you know how to walk to church, and obviously that's work too. When does this nonsense stop? When? See, that's the work of the devil. They want to cut off any possibility for us to get the gospel out. Just think about it. How about would it be okay for us to go and distribute food to the people on the Sabbath, the people that doesn't have anything to eat? Would it be okay? No, we can't do that on the Sabbath neither. We need to take out. We need to take out. We can't do it on Sunday neither, because Sunday obviously is the Sabbath for these people. We can't do it on Sunday, and we can't do it on Sabbath, because God forbids it on Sabbath, and they forbid it on Sunday. So we have to take a day off from work to go and do that. That's what we have to do. That's their idea. If we cannot go and help someone on the Sabbath, because remember, we can't drive. We can't, because that's working. And obviously we can't back these pots there and say we're gonna say we ain't gonna drive, we can just walk there. We can't do that either, these hot pots and stuff, and then we sweating. And obviously that would be work. I mean, if walking is work, backing some pots and stuff with food in it, I don't see how that can be work. We can't do that either. This is the level of nonsense that they will try to dump on us. And we're supposed to answer this. We should answer these people. How would I answer this question? Well, let me take a crack at it. Maybe be as blunt as possible. The answer is no and yes. No. First, let's start with the no. Okay, because it's not an easy response to this question. You have to give the correct response, not the easy, the correct one. No, because when you are doing good, you cannot be breaking the Sabbath. When you are doing good, that is lawful to do good. So if it is lawful, then it cannot be unlawful. And unlawful will be breaking the Sabbath. Lawful would be not breaking the Sabbath, not breaking the law. That's why it's lawful. You don't get in jail for being lawful. You get in jail for being unlawful. With that said, now let's go to the yes. Is this person doing something? They are working in a hospital. They are working. Would that be breaking the Sabbath? We have to say yes, because they're working. The priest was working as well. Were they breaking the Sabbath? But obviously, they're working. They have to be breaking the Sabbath. But then how could they be breaking the Sabbath and it also be lawful to do it? Because if God tells you to do something, because God is the lawgiver, he tells you to do this. How could it be unlawful? Even if it is breaking the Sabbath, how could it be unlawful? If the lawgiver is telling you to do this, how could it be unlawful? You see, this is the gray area that they like to live in. They get these type of questions where they're obviously they have a point of what they're saying, but it is being misconstrued and deceptively so. They're looking for a gotcha moment. That's what they're looking for. They're deceitful and shameless. And on top of that, they're Trinitarian.
Time once again. All right, Tony, your turn.
I would just say that there's some inconsistency with our Adventist friends, because it does say that they're not to kindle a fire on the Sabbath day. Do you start a fire in the fireplace on the Sabbath?
Okay, when you talk about kindle a fire, he is also, I don't know if he's confused or he just doesn't know. It was referring to cooking. That's what it was referring to. It wasn't referring to kindling a fire, say, when you get in the winter. This is how the devil works. See, he takes what God has commanded and he twists it. Let's think about this example. Let's think about this example. You are working from Sunday to Friday. Like, let's just say we were back in Old Testament time, not New Testament, and Moses and all those. You have, well, in this case, God gave them shelter in the day and heat in the night. So they really did not need to kindle a fire, because that would have been totally unnecessary. So that would have been a sin. But just look at it this way. How about when God wasn't there anymore? When that cloud had dissipated and God wasn't in the cloud anymore? Like when they went into Canaan. Because before they went into Canaan, they could not kindle any type of fire, because that was wholly unnecessary unless it was to cook. And God had straightly commanded them, you prepare your food the day before the Sabbaths. Okay, so this is not just the 7-day Sabbath, but all the other Sabbaths too. Because they were Sabbaths and they were kept in the same way. The day before, the ceremonial Sabbath, was a preparation day. This is where they get confused. And when the 3 days and 3 nights that Jesus was in the tomb, they can't figure that out for some reason, even though the Bible explicitly says it. They can't. Let me not just go there. But let's think about this example. You have the Jews that during those 40 years in the wilderness, they did not need to kindle a fire unless it was to cook. They didn't need to kindle a fire. No fire could have been kindled, because the only reason you would have kindled a fire was to cook. That's the only reason that you would have needed to do that. No other reason. Even though they were out there in the wilderness, the Bible clearly states that God provided them heat in the night and shelter from the sun in the day, the entire camp. So for you to kindle a fire, that would have specifically go expressly against what God commanded. Because they were supposed to prepare their food on Friday, the day before the Sabbath. And if it was any of the other Sabbaths, it would be the day before that day. So if that Sabbath has fell on a Thursday, then Tuesday would have been the preparation day. Simple, right? Think confusing. Oh, but there's all type of confusion this has garnered for these people. They can't understand that. No, they don't even come close. Anyways, what I'm saying is the only reason that they would have the kindle fire was to cook. That's why it was strictly forbidden. They did not have this problem when they went into Canaan, because they were no longer being heated by the Lord. That was only in the wilderness that took place. When they went into Canaan, they still could not kindle a fire on the Sabbath, because why would you do that? To cook. But they could kindle a fire. So, for example, if it is cold, cold, freezing, you could kindle a fire for heat. That would have been a necessity. See the difference? It would have been a necessity. Or should they have all died in the cold? The temperature dropped so low. We can't turn on the heat today because today is Sabbath. Just think about what that would have done to the child. Would they have looked forward to the Sabbath? Or would they have, oh my, the Sabbath is coming. We have to prepare for the torture that's what we're going to endure. Only these people can come up with this nonsense, brothers and sisters. Only the devil can pull this together. And they don't think that they're doing the devil's work, but that's exactly what they're doing. It's just like the Pharisees. They believe what the Pharisees did because they think that the Pharisee was totally correct when the Pharisee told Christ that he was breaking the Sabbath. Yeah, they didn't side with Christ. They sided with the Pharisees. Because the Pharisees was right. Christ was wrong. Christ was wrong when he went out, then he plucked the corn. Christ was wrong. The Pharisees was right. These are Pharisees, modern days Pharisees, man. They believe everything that the Pharisees tell them. And they're still teaching it today. The reason why they couldn't kindle the fire because they didn't need to. God was giving them heat. The only reason they would need the kindle fire was to cook. But when that heat wasn't there, they could kindle the fire. But they still couldn't do it to cook. But they could kindle the fire for heat. Now, would they have gone out and looked for sticks on Sabbath? No, because that would have been the preparation, right? The preparation for that is done on the day before the Sabbath. That's when that's done. They will need to have those logs or whatever they're going to kindle for fire in the house. You don't go, oh, to this Sabbath, I'm going to go out now and pick up some sticks. Because remember, God killed someone for that. That's what that dude was doing on the Sabbath. He went out to picking up sticks, and what you doing? He couldn't answer. What you doing? They took him and took him to Moses. Moses, this guy here picking up sticks on the Sabbath. Yeah, he was picking up, working on the Sabbath. He want to go and make, why would he be picking up sticks? Only to make fire. Something was totally unnecessary. Because he definitely wouldn't cook in manna. The manna would have, was no manna that day. And the day from before. So why was he out there? What was he planning on cooking? What was he planning on cooking? He didn't have any manna to cook because that would have spoiled on the Sabbath. What was he out there doing? I was strictly in defiance of God. That's why he died for that. Playing with God, see? Think God doesn't mean what he says. And these people are in the same boat. They think God doesn't mean what he says. They're going to see one day that that's not true. What God says, he means that. And he's going to follow through with it. They ain't blind threats, brothers and sisters. They might look like that right now because fire and brimstone isn't coming down. But brothers and sisters, that day is coming. That day is coming. You can rest assured. This is no joke.
Sabbath day, we're forbidden to light a fire. You're also forbidden.
Well, since you've not been able to answer this, maybe I'm asking too much.
And it actually to kill anyone who breaks the Sabbath. And so under the Mosaic law, we read in the book of Numbers that someone actually profaned the Sabbath by doing something like picking up sticks. That's all they were doing. Maybe they were picking up sticks to kindle a fire. And
what else would they be doing that? Maybe. That's exactly why he was picking up sticks. That's exactly why he was doing it. I don't know, maybe.
The Lord say, put him to death for breaking my Sabbath. And so this goes back to the question.
And you see, that's why the Bible said they're going to be without excuse. He knows about this. And he still thinks that he can do it. That was that guy, but that's not me. I'm special.
How you observe the Sabbath. I mean, of course, the rabbis have extrapolated. What does that mean? Don't light a fire. Well, that means in modern terminology, don't turn on a light bulb. Don't use electricity, because that would
see how. Once again, he's going right to the Pharisees. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up.
Be akin to the lighting of a fire. But I'm not advocating for that, for the rabbinic interpretation. All I'm saying is there's many injunctions on the Sabbath that
he's not advocating for that. But let me just mention it just in case, just make sure that you know that they believe the same thing I believe, or I believe the same thing that they believe. Why would he say that if that's not the case? That's exactly the case.
Adventist
Time.
doctrine. And one of them is you're not to kindle a fire on the Sabbath day.
All righty.
All right. Next one here is just a comment, but we still want to bring it out for the super chat. The Sabbatismos, Hebrews 4, is a perpetual rest like God rested perpetually after his creative work. That's a gospel truth. Thank you for that, Rick's Bible study. Jonathan has a question. He asks, is keeping the Saturday Sabbath a salvational issue? Kind of the same as what was asked before, but we'll still give you the time for 1 minute. Jose?
All right. So the salvation is no more than any of the other 10 commandments. So the consistency is there are 10 commandments. This is a consistency if we're going to agree to that. I mean, my opponent and I don't agree with that. But if we're going to agree that there are 10 commandments, all right, should we continue in sin, which is law breaking, that grace may abound? Certainly not. So it becomes a salvation issue if I believe that Jesus died to keep me in sin. He didn't die to keep me in sin, he died to take me out of sin. And so, I have a couple more seconds. So let me just say this. I would say that, therefore, we just need to be paying attention to whether or not the 10 Commandments is important for the Christian or not, for the saved person or not. But we're not saved by the law, and we're not kept by it either.
Okay. Let me just answer the question. Let me just say that. Yes and no. See, this is how God works. God always gives us a way. God is reasonable. Let's put it that. God is reasonable. If you do not know about the Sabbath, it is not a salvational issue. It is not. And not even if you do not, if you even know about the Sabbath, but do not understand it. Because there's going to be a whole lot. The Bible has existed since Christ gave it, right? Let's reference the New Testament, and the Old Testament. But let's give both. The Bible, let's just say that, has existed since Christ gave it. Everyone that was able to read the Bible read the same thing that we read. Isn't that true? Could we agree on that? Everyone that read the Bible read the same thing that we read, because it supposedly is the same Bible, right? So what we read today, they read then. And people in the past actually had more data than we have today. Would that be a good, would people be able to accept that? Hopefully, yes. If you don't, tough luck. That's the way it is. It's a real world here. If you read about the Sabbath, because there's going to be a whole lot of people, say even Catholics, right? That was in the past, in the Dark Ages, that stayed Catholic, that died Catholic, that raised up Catholics, that lived as Catholic, and that died as Catholics. Those people also going to be saved. A lot of those people are going to be saved. Why? Even though they read the 7-day Sabbath, they didn't understand it. They didn't know. They didn't realize that it was holy, because they were not taught that. Even if they read it, they relied on other people to explain the scriptures, namely the priests, explain the scriptures to them. And the priest told everything. This we keep Sunday because God has given authority to the church to change Sabbath, sacredness of Sabbath to Sunday, and that was good enough for them. Say, well, God gave that authority to the church. They didn't know that. They didn't know any better. But that's the information that they were given, and that's the information they lived and died with. See, for these people, they will be judged by their moral law. Why? Because they didn't know any better. Even though they had the Bible, they didn't know any better. They 100% believed in the sacredness of the church. And if the church said that, well, God gave this authority to the church to do. So they were still following God. So they will be judged by the moral law. How did they treat their fellow men? They will not be judged by the first 4 commandments. Because their God was the Trinity even back then. It wasn't a real God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. They didn't realize. Even the command, thou shalt not bow down thyself to graven images. That's what they were doing. Praying to St. Peter and St. this one, St. that one, and Mary and all that. That's what they were doing. A lot of those people are going to be saved, even though they read about the Sabbath, but they didn't understand it. Why didn't they understand? Because they didn't have anyone to explain it to them. This is why when the reformers came on the scene, people started to ask questions, because finally someone was given the correct explanation of what they had read. And they can say, well, I mean, that's actually what it says. But you know, the church told me something else. And then they had to make a decision. Would they have been saved after knowing the truth and understanding it? Would they have been saved then if they continue in their defiance of God? No. So the question to this answer is yes and no. When you know about the truth and then you decide that you ain't going to do it, yes, it is a salvational issue. Because no liars, no adulterers, no deceivers are going to get to heaven. And that's what they're doing. Saying that you do not have to keep the Sabbath and all that. It is deceiving people. You can get to heaven. Yes, it is a salvational issue for us today. When I say ask anyone that understands the Sabbath and is able to relate to what it is saying and not what people say it is saying. Yes, it is a salvational issue.
All right. Tony, you have 1 minute as well, sir.
Yeah, the same apostle that said that, should we live in sin, that grace may abound? Certainly not. Is the same apostle who said, whoever observes the day, observes to the Lord, let no one pass judgment on you. Colossians 2:16, he's the same apostle who said, therefore let no one judge you.
You know, Jose should have really jump on that. Because notice how many times have he brought that up? These people are totally ignorant of what they're saying. I have no doubt that he actually believed that. He had told that, preached that so many times that is the truth for him. How great is that darkness when light has become darkness and darkness have become light? How great is that? They don't know where they are. They don't know the situation that they're in. Sad state, brothers and sisters.
About a festival, a new moon, or a Sabbath day. All of these were a shadow of that which was to come, the shadow of the reality which is Christ. And in Hebrews 8, we're told that the law, the first covenant, was rendered obsolete. Well, if it's obsolete, then there's a need for a new covenant. And that's what Hebrews says. If the first one did not lack anything, there'd be no need for a new one. And so the apostle...
That's not what it says. Man, this guy is a deceiver. That's not... Have mercy. But we already went through that in previous video. See, this... Look at Jose. The reason why he can't see any of this is because he's a Trinitarian as well. To really be able to put Tony in his place, try to give him some type of light, you can't be a Trinitarian and do that. Because if he was to try to do that, he would get in problem. Not only with Tony, not only with Miles, but with the church. The Seventh-day Adventist church would cause a problem. You know, we have our hands tied behind our back and we're blindfolded. Our legs are tied too. That's the situation that our Seventh-day Adventist pastors are in this abomination called the Trinity. Totally incapable of defending our faith, ourselves, for that matter. Man, this is sad. Sad.
Paul has already answered this question. That's why there's no direct commandment by the Apostle Paul in his letters or any of the apostles about keeping the Sabbath day or the
Yeah,
fourth.
you don't have to do that. Because people follow Paul by example. Paul went to church on the Sabbath. That should have been enough for anyone else. Christ didn't tell anyone to keep the Sabbath either. I don't remember Christ telling anyone you had to keep the Sabbath, but Christ kept the Sabbath. And if Christ was keeping the Sabbath, guess what the disciples was doing? Yeah, guess what they were doing? Guess what his followers, and I want to emphasize the word followers, was doing when he did that? I guess what do you think they were doing? See, he didn't have to say that. That was common sense. It's like when God sacrificed the lamb there with Adam and Eve. I don't read anywhere where God said, now you have to go out and sacrifice. I don't read where God told them to do that. Why did they do that? Because God did it. That's why they do it. I mean, it would be common sense. But like I say, the Trinitarians is kind of lacking in that department.
The fourth commandment.
All
right, Francis. I guess that'll be enough for today. May God bless and keep you. I'll try to see if I can post this one out as quick as possible. Don't hold me to that, but I'll definitely try to get it out there. Hopefully today. God bless. You have a wonderful Sabbath. Bye-bye.